What is up, everyone? I'm Rusty, your local laboratory maniac. This is Labman EDH, where we specialize in EDH deck building and talking about commander cards. This video will be a deep analysis on deck brewed around Absolute Virtue. Absolute Virtue is a pretty cool card coming out in the Final Fantasy set. I'm super pumped about this set. How do you guys feel about it? Normally, I do like 3 to 5 decks in a video, very different decks in the videos with a variety of strategies. But in this, I'll be doing a deep analysis on this deck and the alternative decks built around it. So you'll see what I mean here shortly. And hopefully, we go over some cool cards you haven't seen that you can use in your decks, even if this deck style is not right for you. But before we jump into it, I want to thank my subscribers and everyone who's left likes and comments. I do read each comment and reply to them. If you want to hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, and comment down below what Final Fantasy card are you going to be building around. I've built a few on my deck, but I'd love to hear from you guys. Now, deck lists are down below. And the decks I talk about in this video, there's 3 total deck lists of variants of this one deck. And if you want, follow me on Moxfield where I post all my decks. I'm slowly putting all my in-paper decks onto Moxfield. So without further ado, let's jump into it. So this deck will be kind of broken down into 3 different focuses. I kind of want to show you guys the pathways I take to build decks, trying multiple strategies and my reasonings behind it. This will actually be a deck centered around Absolute Virtue. Now, Absolute Virtue is a legendary card. However, this will be more of a secret commander because I did build an Absolute Virtue deck and it was a good deck. However, it just wasn't the playstyle I was looking for. Basically, you mana wrap until you get that out and then protect it with your life. That way, no one can harm you. But anyway, let's talk about Absolute Virtue and what it does. It's a 6 generic, 1 white, 1 blue legendary creature, Avatar Warrior. It has this spell can't be countered, as flying, and it gives you protection from each of your opponents, and it's an 8/8. Now, this is doing a lot of cool stuff. That protection from opponents is a huge deal, and it's on an 8/8 body. Now, the mana value is pretty high, but we can get around that. So, just a lore tidbit about Absolute Virtue. It is an infamous boss monster in Final Fantasy. It is notorious for being the longest running monster that remained undefeated by players through legitimate means. And you do see that in the card. It makes you almost unbeatable unless they get rid of it. Now, let's talk a little bit about protection. So, how does protection from an opponent work? It means you can't be targeted by spells or abilities that opponent controls. If enchanted by an opponent, the auras will fall off. Damage by sources they control is prevented, and they can't block creatures you control. And if you are looking into the rules for this, look at rule number 702.16k, and it talks all about it. So, this thing, as I read earlier, it is giving you basically hexproof, so your opponent can't target you, and it's also fogging and preventing damage, and it's also preventing people from blocking. Well, we can do all those things in other ways. For example, you got Witchbane Orb and Orbs of Warding. A Witchbane Orb is 4 generic artifact. If you're enchanted with curses, destroy all curses attached to you. And then it says you have hexproof. Now, that's exactly what a part of Absolute Virtue's ability is doing. And then you got Orbs of Warding. It's a 5 generic artifact. You have hexproof, and if a creature would deal damage to you, prevent 1 of that damage. Now, that is doing a little more than a Witchbane Orb, but it's kind of in the same vein. It's preventing some damage, it's giving you hexproof. I don't know what it is about orbs, but they seem to protect people a lot. Both of these are orb-based cards. So creatures can also give you hexproof. You got Aegis of the Gods. It is a 1 generic, 1 white enchantment creature, human soldier. You have hexproof, and it's a 2/1. That's pretty self-explanatory there. Now, There's also things that give you protection from everything, and obviously that includes your opponents. Teferi's protection is probably the most common use, but that's a game changer. So you also got Perch protections, not a game changer, but it's similar to Teferi's protection. It's a 4 generic 2 white instant, gift an extra turn, so you can give an opponent an extra turn if you want. It says create 4 2/2 blue bird creature tokens with flying. If a gift was promised, all permanents you control phase out, and until your next turn, your life total can't change, and you gain protection from everything, and you exile Perch protection. So that'll also do the same thing. It prevents you from having any damage. Now, when I was making Absolute Virtue, I was thinking, what decks will this be good against, and what decks will this be weak against? So, what decks would it be good against? You got any deck that wins by combat, which is a majority of them. So, obviously, that's going to be fantastic. Then you got your mill, you got your burn, you got your curses, you got your graveyard hate. A lot of graveyard hate is like Bajuka Bog and stuff that targets a player's graveyard. They can't do that, obviously, if you have hexproof or protection. Discard decks. A lot of these decks are kind of hard to play against. They're not as fun. Like discard decks, definitely not fun. But what if you're playing Absolute Virtue and the only thing your opponent is doing on this list is winning by combat? Then you're like missing out on a lot of the benefits. Well, one thing we can do as a deck builder is try to get our opponents to do the things that we're good against. That way we have an advantage. But you're probably asking, how can you make your opponent play mill or burn or curses or discard or graveyard hate? Well, it's pretty easy. We can make our spells have demonstrate and we can play some of those effects. So our commanders actually work really good for the strategy we're looking for. That demonstrated ability is very effective. So you got the 12th Doctor. It's 3 generic, 1 blue, 1 red. It's a legendary creature, Time Lord Doctor. The first spell you cast anywhere other than your hand has demonstrate. And then whenever you copy a spell, put a +1/+1 counter on the 12th Doctor. And it's a 4/4. So if we're playing anything from Exile, Top of the Library, Command Zone, anything like that, we can actually copy it. That's what Demonstrate does. Demonstrate gives you a copy and your opponent a copy. So if let's say we're casting Lightning Bolt off the top of our library, we can demonstrate it so we get another copy and then our opponent gets a copy. And then are the Doctor's Companions. Romana the second is a 3 generic, 1 white legendary creature, Time Lord Scientist, Vigilance. Pay 1 generic, tap it, create a token that's a copy of target token that entered the battlefield this turn. And as Doctor's Companion, it's a 3/3. So obviously getting a 2-for-1, so a demonstrate copy and the original, and your opponent gets a demonstrate copy. Our Doctor's Companion can actually give us a 3-for-1 if we are copying a permanent spell, because permanent spells that are copied come in as tokens. But before we do any of that kind of shenanigans, we want to get Absolute Virtue on the field, of course. And the best way to do that is to tutor form. In Jeskai, there's plenty of ways to do that. A lot of them have to do with legendary. So, like Search for Glory lets you search out a legendary card from your deck, put into your hand. And then you got the Day of the Doctor. This fits the Doctor theme if you want to go that route. And it's a 3 generic, Boros colors as 4 chapter abilities. The first 3 are all the same. You exile cards until you reveal a legendary card. Then you can cast that as long as the Day of the Doctor remains on the battlefield. Put the rest exiled on the bottom of your library in random order. And then the fourth ability is choose up to 3 Doctors. You may exile all other creatures. If you do, the Day of the Doctor deals 13 damage to you. So this is perfect. We only have a few legendary creatures or legendary cards in our deck, so this will almost always get you Absolute Virtue. You just want to make sure you're able to cast it. And then you got stuff like Thalia's Lancer has an ETB trigger that searches for a legendary. You got long-term plans. It's 2 generic, 1 blue instant. Search your library for a card, shuffle your library, then put it third from the top. Obviously, you don't want to demonstrate this because then you'll shuffle what you search away for the original copy, but it's still something that can get you absolute virtue. Just play this at the end of your opponent's turn, and you won't have to wait long. Now, once we get the virtue, we want to protect it with our lives because that's what's keeping us alive and us protected for our game plan. You got Galadriel's Dismissal. It's a 1 white instant as a kicker for 2 generic and a white. Target creature phases out if this spell was kicked. Each creature target player controls phases out instead. Now, we are playing a lot of hexproof creatures, a lot of hexproof artifacts, like to give us hexproof, not them having hexproof. And one thing we really are going to hone in on are target player or target opponent abilities. So, Galadriel's Dismissal, that is a protection spell for us. But if we want to target an opponent, phase out all their creatures, and then copy it to phase out another opponent's, and then give your opponents a copy, and then they have to choose one of the opponents to phase out. So, it can phase out the whole board except for your stuff. Then you got March of Swirling Mix. It's an X blue instant. As an additional cost to cast this spell, you may exile any number of blue cards from your hand. This costs 2 colorless less to cast for each card exiled this way. Then up to X target creatures phase out. It's a perfect spell to prevent your absolute virtue from getting targeted, but it can also target your opponent's stuff if you want to take it that route. So, just a reminder, I do have the 3 deck links down below for this deck. I have 3 different versions of the deck, and I'll detail the different versions as we go. There's just so many paths you can take. Whichever path you find the most interesting, that's the one you should take. Now, we're going to be playing things from outside our hand. So, one of my favorite things to do is playing from the top deck. I think it's crazy good card advantage. One of the decks down below focuses more on that. There's also Impulse Draw, like putting things in exile and then casting them. But you got Magnus of the Future and Future Sight, which obviously go well together. They both do the same thing. They're both 5 mana, but except for Magus of the Future is a creature human wizard with a 2/3, but they both have the same ability. It says play the top card of your library, revealed, and then you may play the top card of your library. So it lets you play, basically extends your hand by 1. And then you got the Reality Chimp. It's a 1 generic, 1 blue legendary artifact creature, equipment jellyfish. You may look at the top card of your library at any time. And then, as long as the reality chip is attached to a creature, you may play lands and cast spells from the top of your library. And then it has reconfigure for 2 generic and a blue. And it's a 0/4. So obviously you equip this to one of your creatures, and then it's basically a future sight. You can play from the top card. And same thing with Experimental Frenzy. It plays from the top card as well. So it's 3 generic, 1 red enchantment. You may look at the top card of your library at any time. You may play the top card of your library, and then it says you can't play cards from your hand. You can pay 3 generic and a red, destroy Experimental Frenzy. So this obviously comes with a downside of you not being able to play from your hand, but still it lets you play from the top of your deck. And if you don't like what's on top of your deck, you can just destroy this and move on. And since we're playing from the top of a deck, everyone should be familiar with Sensei's Divining Top. It's a 1 generic artifact. You pay 1 generic, look at the top 3 cards of your library, then put them back in any order. Then you can tap the top, draw a card, and put it on top of its owner's library. So you can put the Sensei's Divining Top on top of your library and then cast it with something like Future Sight. And if you want to demonstrate it, that's cool too. But it manipulates the top 3 cards of your library, so hopefully you get something you actually want. The top is so good in this deck that you might want something like Trinket Mage. It's a 2 generic, 1 blue creature human wizard. When it ETBs, you search your library for an artifact with 1 CMC or less, reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle your library. It's a 2/2. So you can always search for your top if you want. Impulse Draw in this kind of deck would be great, of course. Like I said, prefer the top deck mode, but hey, Impulse Draw in the last 3 years has gotten so good. Okay, for example, we got two here for you. We got Kate Sith Fortune Teller. It's a 3 generic, 1 red, legendary artifact creature, Cat Moogle. As at the beginning of combat on your turn, scry 1, then exile the top card of your library. You may play that card this turn. When you exile a card this way, target creature you control gets +X/+0 until end of turn, where X is the card's mana value. So it's also a 3/3. So this is doing three things that we want. We want to scry, of course. Top deck manipulation is important. Impulse draws and boosts. Remember, our virtue is an 8/8. So just boosting it a couple times, getting in because it can't be blocked by your opponent, and hopefully you close out the game pretty fast. Then you got Yasmin Khan. It's a 3 generic, 1 red, legendary creature, human detective. You can tap it, exile the top card of your library until your next instep. You may play it. As Doctor's Companion, it's a 3/3. So obviously do this at the end of your opponent's turn if you can wait. That way you can do it again. So you have two cards in Impulse if you to choose from. So now, one of my favorite impulse kind of draw styles is the Parting of the Ways. It is a 4 generic, 2 red. It is a saga. It has 3 chapters. The first chapter says exile the top 5 cards of your library. For each non land card exiled this way, put a number of time counters on it equal to its mana value. If it doesn't have suspend, it gains suspend. Chapter 2 is time travel, time travel. Chapter 3 is for each opponent, destroy up to one target artifact that player controls. And it's an enchantment saga, like I said. So, this is really cool. Usually you get 3 or 4 cards that are non-lands if you're lucky. And then most of them will be 3 CMC or less. So by the start of your next main phase on your next turn, the pre-combat main phase on your next turn, you can possibly cast for free 2 or 3 spells. So it's pretty good. I never am disappointed when I draw it. And then a late game option for Impulse Draw is Commune with Lava. It's X generic, 2 red, instant. Exile the top X cards of your library until the end of the next turn. You may play those cards. So you get to play them until the end of your next turn. You can play this. Hopefully X is 5 or more at the end of your opponent's turn. That way, during your turn, you untap and draw. Then you have 5 cards just chilling there for you to cast. It's really good late game when you have no hand size really. So, as some of you who have played impulse draw decks or have played decks that play from the top of the library, the worst thing to do is getting multiple lands because you only get to play one of them. But even though we're not in green, we still have some options that help us alleviate that problem. You got Gear Report Ori. It's a 4 generic artifact. Each player may play an additional land on each of his or her turn, and then at the beginning of each player's upkeep, if that player has no cards in hand, that player draws 3 cards. So it helps your opponent, but hopefully will benefit more from it. Then you got Zell Dinch. It's a 2 generic, 1 red, legendary creature, human monk. You may play an additional land on each of your turns. Zell actually gets +1/+0 for each land you control, and then at the beginning of your end step, you return a land you control to its owner's hand. And it's a 0/3, so it can just help get things from the top of your library, so that way you can go into more spells. Now, for mana ramping packages for this, you don't want to play a lot of talismans or stuff like that that your opponent can benefit from. You want to do something like Claim Jumper or Gift of Estates, where you search for planes if your opponent has more lands than you. You're always demonstrate the card to an opponent who doesn't even play planes. That way, you always benefit. For example, you got Claim Jumper. It's 2 generic, 1 white creature, Rabbit Mercenary as Vigilance. And when it enters the battlefield, if an opponent controls more lands than you, you search your library for a planes card and put it onto the battlefield tapped. Then an opponent controls more lands than you. Repeat this process once. If you search your library this way, shuffle. It's a 3/3. So you demonstrate a copy of it, give it to an opponent who is playing mono black, and then you're golden because your opponent doesn't benefit and you just doubled your profit. Then you got Gift of Estates. It's a 1 generic, 1 white sorcery. If your opponent controls more lands than you do, search your library for up to 3 planes and then put them into your hand. Shuffle your deck afterwards. This is back in the day when they called a library a deck. I like this art on Gift of Estates if you've never seen it. Now, Our removal and board wipes will also be target opponent things. So, for example, you got River's Rebuke. It's a 4 generic, 2 blue sorcery. Return all non-land permanents target player controls to the owner's hand. We will hopefully have protection or hexproof. So if we copy this, we choose 2 opponents, then your opponent is left with a choice. They can either target an opponent who's already been targeted, or they can target your third opponent. And then you got Mog Infestation. This is one of my favorites. It's kind of weird because it's one of the few destroy abilities in red. It's a 3 generic, 2 red sorcery. Destroy all creatures target player controls. For each creature put into the graveyard this way, put 2 goblin tokens into play under that player's control. Treat these as 1/1 red creature tokens. So you can, it's the same thing as River's Rebuke. You choose one player and then copy it, and then your opponent is forced to choose either the other player, or maybe they can target themselves and quadruple and double their goblin tokens that they're getting. Now, there's other abilities that target player. For example, you got Psychic Possession. This card's actually like $17 now. I'm surprised because I've never seen it played. It's 2 generic, 2 blue, enchantment or enchant opponent. This was before curses. You skip your draw step, uh, but when your opponent draws, you draw a card. So even though you're skipping your draw step, you get to draw cards when they draw cards. So if you're copying this, you can draw cards whenever 2 opponents, and then hopefully you copy it with your other commander, and you can draw every time your opponent draws. You can be drawing like crazy. Then you got Amnesia. It's a 3 generic, 3 blue sorcery. You look at target player's hand. Target player discards all non-land cards in his or her hand. Now this card, look at this art. This is kind of crazy. It's from the Dark, and the Dark was a weird set. It wasn't a great set, but it was very weird and thematic. So this is the discard thing I mentioned. There are blue stuff that like make people discard. It's not just a black ability, of course. And this is kind of a mean card. I didn't put it in the deck, but you could, if you're okay with discarding, your play group is cool with it, I say do it. And 2 lands I just want to highlight before we get into the more specific stuff. This has all just been generic stuff you could put in any 3 of these decks. You got a few lands here. You got Trenzalore Clock Tower. It's a legendary land. You can tap it for blue, put a time counter on it. Then you can pay a generic and a blue, tap it, remove 12 time counters from it, and exile it. Shuffle your graveyard and hand into your library, then draw 7 cards. Activate only if you have a Time Lord. And of course, both your commanders are Time Lords, so that works out. And it could just take the place of an island. It has no drawback whatsoever other than it being a legendary and non basic land. Then you got Mystic Sanctuary. It's a land island. You can tap it for blue, and when it ETBs tapped unless you have 3 or more islands. And then if it enters untapped, you may put target instant or sorcery from your graveyard on top of your library. And hopefully we can play it from the top of the library because that's what our deck is doing. Now, the first version of this deck I have is all about burning. You want to make your opponents burn, then you want to copy your burn spell, make another opponent burn, and then your opponent gets to copy and they'll make someone burn. All these burns will have the target opponent or target player ability. Now, for example, the Paradox ability is really good. Uh, to be quite frank, Keeper of the Secrets was around before Paradox was around, so it doesn't have that keyword ability or anything like that, but it's the same thing. So, Keeper of Secrets is a 5 generic, 1 red creature demon. It's a mono red demon. I love it. It has first strike and haste. And then, whenever you cast a spell from anywhere other than your hand, Keeper of Secrets deals damage equal to that creature's or that spell's mana value to target opponent. So it's doing the target opponent, it's doing the damage thing. It is a 6/4, so it's a pretty good beater. So you copy this, you're doing double damage, and your opponent hopefully won't benefit from it because they're not casting a bunch of stuff other than maybe their commander from not from their hand. Then you got Memory Worm. It's a 1 generic, 1 red creature alien worm. Whenever you cast a spell from anywhere other than your hand, Memory Worm deals 2 damage to target player. That player discards a card, then draws a card. Put a +1/+1 counter on Memory Worm, and it's a 1/1. So this is doing the target player damage thing, and also boosts itself, which is good. Then you got stuff like big. There's a lot of good big burn spells. I've always loved them. They're always so not very cost effective. They always cost a lot, but they're always just so cool looking. I always want to make a deck around it. I kind of fit some in here. You got Explosion of the Riches. It's 5 generic, 1 red sorcery. You draw the card, then each other player may draw a card. Whenever a card is drawn this way, Explosion of Riches deals 5 damage to target opponent chosen at random from among your opponents. So basically, your opponent's not guaranteed to take damage. One of them is, but it's 1 out of 3. So if they draw if they each draw a card, then you get to do this, I believe, 3 times. Whenever a card is drawn this way, Explosion of Rich does 5. Yeah, so it's so yeah, so you do it 3 times. One opponent can take 15 damage, but if you double this, then your opponents probably won't draw anything. However, it's still fun. It's still fun. They'll probably draw it just to risk it for the biscuit. At least my play group will. Then you got Flame Wave. It's a 3 generic, 4 red sorcery. Flame Wave deals 4 damage to target player and each creature that he or she controls. So this obviously is a board wipe plus a burn to the face. If you copy this, it's doing 8 damage to a player and 8 damage to all creatures they control. So that could be pretty beneficial. Then you got a few curses and a background that also does stuff like this. So you got Passionate Archaeologist. This one's actually kind of pricey, so proxy it if you can. But it's a 1 generic, 1 red legendary enchantment background. Commander creatures you control have whenever you cast a spell from exile, this creature deals damage equal to that spell's mana value to target opponent. So if you're doing the impulse draw, this is perfect. If you're doing the top deck draw, it doesn't work as good, but still. Then you got Curse and Bloodletting. It's a 3 generic, 2 red. It's an enchantment or a curse. Enchant player. If a sorcery deal damage to the enchanted player, it deals double that damage instead. And this is perfect for the deck. If you're, let's say, you have a Curse of Bloodletting, you copied it, you have one on each opponent, then you play Flame Wave, and then you double Flame Wave, so you're doing 8 damage to 2 opponents. And speaking of double damage, you can obviously put Fire Emancipation and City on Fire, which are both enchantments that will triple damage, which is insane. At some point, they're going to come out with quadruple damage, I swear. It's getting kind of crazy. So the next theme is actually Mill. Most mill spells, not all of course, but most mill spells target your opponents. And there's some big mill spells that you can play. For example, you got Cut Your Losses. It's a 4 generic, 2 blue sorcery. As casualty 2, and then target player mills half their library rounded down. So this is an ability that if you copy it, you can get rid of what 3/4 of your opponent's current deck. So, or you can copy it, target 2 opponents, and then another opponent gets a copy if it's demonstrated, and then they get to choose which opponent. It's always interesting to see who you're going to demonstrate it. Like you typically, like if I play Cut Your Losses, targeting opponent 1 and opponent 2, I would give opponent 1 or 2 the demonstrate copy, and they would most likely choose the opponent that didn't get chosen, so they were even out. That's at least to my mind how it would work. I haven't play tested this, of course, but then you got something like Fleet Swallower. I just love this art. I bought this. I remember this Secret Lair came out with a lot of like scary movie stuff, and I loved it. So it's a 5 generic, 2 blue creature fish. Whenever Fleet Swallower attacks, target player mills half their library rounded up, and it's a 6/6. So it's a repeatable. If you have 2 of these, you get 2 6s, 6/6s, and you mill 2 opponents half their library, and then your opponent obviously will get one, but they don't have to attack, but they probably will. And then this next card is actually similar to the other two. It's Traumatized. It's 3 generic, 2 blue sorcery. Target player mills the top half of their library rounded down and puts it into the graveyard, of course. Then you got Fray Insanity. Now, Fray Insanity combos with them. So, Fray Insanity is 2 generic, 1 blue, enchantment or a curse. Enchant player. At the beginning of each end step, enchanted player puts the top X cards of his or her library into his or her graveyard, where X is the number of cards they'll put there from anywhere this turn. So, it basically will turn someone from milling half of their library to milling their whole library. And of course, Usually that will kill them. However, there's Eldrazi. There's other cards that can prevent this, but now, two cards that actually work with Mill that aren't exactly like the half their library goes away cards. You got Tunnel Vision. Tunnel Vision is a 5 generic, 1 blue sorcery. Name a card. Target player reveals cards from the top of his or her library until the named card is revealed. If it is, that player puts the rest of the revealed cards into his or her graveyard and puts the named card on top of his or her library. Otherwise, that player shuffles his or her library. So obviously, you're going to have to play a guessing game, which is fun in and of itself. But you know the cards that people typically play. You know what your play group plays. So this can be pretty good. You could obviously, if you're facing a complete stranger, it's a safe bet. You name Soul Ring, you'll get something. And obviously, this is a target player ability, so you can copy it, and you'll hopefully be safe with the hexproof. And you got Teleman Performance. It's 3 generic, 2 blue, sorcery. Target opponent reveals cards from the top of his or her library until he or she reveals a creature card. That player puts all non creature cards revealed this way into his or her graveyard. Then you put the creature card into play under your control. So you can steal multiple things from your opponent. If you want to pick the same opponent, you can make them mill a lot. If they're a heavy creature based deck, it's not going to be milling too much. But if they're not, it could mill them a fair amount. And speaking of stealing stuff, you got Stolen Goods. It's a 3 generic, 1 blue sorcery. Target opponent exiles cards from the top of his or her library until he or she exiles a non-land card. Until end of turn, you may cast that card without paying its mana cost. And then you got Sphinx's Tutelage. It's a 2 generic, 1 blue. A lot of people don't realize this is target opponent here. So it's an enchantment. It says whenever you draw a card, target opponent puts the top 2 cards of his or her library into his or her graveyard. If they're both non-land cards that share a color, repeat this process, and you can pay 5 generic and a blue to draw a card and then discard a card. So this is just doing the mill thing. You want to focus on things that obviously target opponent or target player because you will hopefully be protected. The last style of deck for this kind of deck would be a curse theme. Since you're building around absolute virtue, you will have protection, of course, so your opponent can't target you. So curses, giving your opponents curses to hand out to other people is always great. They're never going to choose themselves for a curse. So if you copy the curse, target 2 of your opponents, most likely they will choose that third opponent. Now, one thing I hate about curses is usually you only can target one player and just kind of like beat them down. It's a very feels bad deck, but this is a curse style deck that isn't like that. It affects all your opponents and it doesn't use black, so it's pretty unique because most of the best black curses or most of the best curses are black. So, but that doesn't mean we don't have amazing curses. For example, one of the best curses to ever exist is Overwhelming Splendor. It's a 6 generic, 2 white. It's an enchantment or a curse. Enchant player. Creatures enchanted player controls lose all abilities and have base power and toughness 1/1. Enchanted player can't activate abilities that aren't mana abilities or loyalty abilities. So it turns off everything that isn't a mana ability. That's amazing. Also, it makes all their creatures lose all their abilities and become 1/1s. If you put this on each of your opponents, unless they have removal, it's done. You wrap it up. You got an 8/8 absolute virtue. Just swing in and start winning. Then you got Curse of Conformity. It's a 4 generic, 1 white enchantment or a curse. Enchant player, non legendary creatures enchanted player controls have base power and toughness 3/3 and lose all creature types. If they're playing a tribal deck that cares about tribes, this nukes it, of course. It only targets the it doesn't target, it only affects the non legendary creatures. And don't play this on an opponent with 100 because you will only be helping them. So, uh, kind of a mean card, but there's Curse of Exhaustion. It's 2 generic, 2 white, enchantment, or a curse. Enchanted player can't cast more than one spell each turn. Obviously, this is brutal, especially late game. People are casting 2, 3, 4 spells a turn. Then you got Curse of Vitality. It's 2 generic, 1 white, enchantment or a curse. Enchant player. Whenever enchanted player is attacked, you gain 2 life. Each opponent attacking that player does the same. You know how much I love life gain. This is perfect for this deck. You give it to all your opponents, then no matter who's attacking who, people are gaining life, and it's just a bunch of shenanigans. And a little lore fact, that guy in the art there is called the most unlucky planeswalker. He doesn't really have a name. That's his name. He's in multiple curses. There's a whole cycle of 5 colors. And then that new Grixis Curse Witch Girl commander uh, actually has a doll of him. So I don't know what she did to I don't know what he did to make her mad, but he regrets it. So we're playing a lot of enchantments. Curses are enchantments. Curses are auras. So you got Mesa Enchantress. It draws a card every time you play an enchantment. And then Pearl Ear Imperial Advisor is a 1 generic, 2 white legendary creature, Fox Advisor, as lifelink. Enchantment spells you cast have affinity for auras. So they'll cost 1 colorless less for each aura you have, and if hopefully you're copying and you have 5, 6, 7 auras, you'd be casting these curses for almost nothing. And then it says whenever you cast an aura spell that targets a modified permanent you control, draw a card. It's a 3/4. We probably won't be using that ability. We're definitely going to be using the cost reduction ability, and having lifelink is really nice. Last 2 curses, you got Curse of Unbinding. It's a 6 generic, 1 blue. Now this actually is a really good card. It's similar to Stolen Goods and those kinds of cards in the middle deck. It's enchant player. At the beginning of enchanted player's upkeep, that player reveals cards from the top of their library until they reveal a creature card. Put that card onto the battlefield under your control. That player puts the rest of the revealed cards this way into the graveyard. So obviously this would work good in the middle deck too. You notice some curses are in the burn deck, in the mill deck, so you can obviously mix and match all these. You don't have to pick like a specific version of these 3 decks. Like only play curses and don't play anything else. Don't play any burn. Don't play any mill. It doesn't have to be that way. You can mix and match. I just hyper focus on one for each of the decks. And then you got Curses Surveillance is a 4 generic, 1 blue enchantment or a curse. Enchant player at the beginning of enchanted player's upkeep, any number of target players other than that player, each draw cards equal to the number of curses attached to that player. So you obviously can't choose the player this is attached to, so you choose hopefully just yourself to draw a bunch of cards, and hopefully multiple opponents have this. But that's essentially the gist of these 3 decks. You have a core set of cards that target your opponents, that mana ramp you, but are so specific it won't help your opponents if they copy them. You got a burn deck that focuses on dealing damage. You got a mill deck that hopefully is milling half of someone's life regularly. And then you got a curse theme deck where you're trying to curse multiple opponents at once. But that's the gist of it. If you like this video and you like this kind of content, I'm coming out with more and more deck ideas. I try to post every Wednesday and Friday, so be on the lookout. If you do like this kind of stuff, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and do comment down below if you want to play any of these decks, or maybe you're building around a different Final Fantasy character. I would love to hear about it. I reply to all comments down below. Until the next video, guys.